Hello, hello, hello. It is July 8th, 2025, and this story is going to be bananas. I just read it a couple days ago, and I'm going to do my best to remember it and recollect. But I guess this is UFO story 17 or 18. I forget where I'm at right now. And this one is very short in relation to the UFO, but there's a lot of other craziness going on. So in May of 2023, I had just finished my Reiki level 1 and 2 class. I had received, the anointment, the ceremony, the symbols, and the downloads and everything else that followed the attunements. And me and my partner at the time, we were going to take hallucinogenic mushrooms. And we hadn't done them at this point, I think in over a year or something like that. Whatever these stories consist and persist of. So, we blessed the mushrooms and set space and containered everything. Thanked the mushrooms, and the elementals and Mother Earth and everybody else for our highest best and what these mushrooms would bring forward and unleash and, bring through. And it was going to be a weekend, or it was a weekend of taking mushrooms, a Saturday and a Sunday, the highs and the lows. And Saturday was the highs and Sunday was the lows. But I'm not going to be talking about Sunday. Well, what happened was, from what I loosely remember and recollect, right away, as we were starting to feel the effects of the mushrooms kicking in, we went into a meditation, and within a second, a UFO just popped up, and I was in the Southwest at night, out in the outback, the country, the desert, wherever. There were buttes and rock formations and cacti and sagebrushes and everything that makes up the desert. And this UFO just came out of nowhere, and it was just waiting and hovering right above me. And this all happened within seconds of me closing my eyes, right? Consciously connecting. And they basically just told me telepathically, "We're waiting for you." Now, since then, she has taken 2 or 3 trips without me to the Southwest, off and on between breakups and whatnot, and that's her jam and that's her deal, and it's a bit of a snub, but apparently I'm meant to be there on my own or with somebody else or at another time. So that was very interesting, right? That UFO popping up and telling me, we're waiting for you. And I would later journal and tell her, we got to get to the Southwest. There are things waiting for me, and that's when they're going to make contact with me, really make contact with me. So, however many more minutes went by, and then I saw what you would call a mushroom head, or literally, phallically, a penis head, or an octopus head, or a jellyfish head of a multi-dimensional being. And I drew it, and it's like I said, if you imagine a mushroom, but with more of a coned and domed head, a huge mushroom, and then you imagine all these streams, kind of like tentacles, right? Like an octopus or a jellyfish. And it's clear and it's see-through. This being was communicating with me. And since the being was transparent and representing everything, probably mushrooms, the divine masculine, octopus and jellyfish and, multidimensional beings, telepathy, transparency, I was just seeing streams and dots and pixels of light moving everywhere through all these tentacles or all these streams or all these forms of what you would call consciousness or information or telepathic, codes. And it was all just dots and colors of light. It was so amazing and so beautiful. And, that was a trip. And there's more that I journaled on that. And then, as this being or this entity or this consciousness or this part of my imagination, because I'm on mushrooms, hallucinogenic mushrooms, or the mushroom itself was communicating to me, then all of a sudden what happened was I was in the Southwest and I was walking around with an old man, an old native man, and he was showing me the ways and showing me this and showing me that. And there's not a description for what he was showing me. But it just kept coming through that I was going to be with him for 2 years. I would be walking with him for 2 years. I would be like an apprentice in a way, learning from him, keeping my mouth shut, and just watching, learning, doing, receiving, and whatnot. And later journaled this and told my partner, I'm like, we got to get to the Southwest. I'm going to be gone for 2 years. I'm going to be hanging out with this old man. And of course, she was dead set against it. But what is interesting, it was also very reminiscent of my awakening about 6 years earlier when I was with my partner in her store, in the back room, the healing room, and she did, Reiki on me for the first time. And what happened was, as I was laying there, going through some of my own, garbage at the time, or just things in life that were very tough, I was like a 16-year-old boy. And I was in what I would say is the base of the pyramid, from the pyramids of Giza. And I had a torch with me. And I could only see so far ahead with the torch, okay? And the rest was darkness. And it was about just moving forward and moving through. But then what happened is I would be at the top of the pyramid, the very top, opening it like a submarine hatch and looking out over the desert. But then I would be trapped in the base again, holding the torch. But then I would be up top, opening it. And this just kept replaying back and forth, till eventually I was on the desert floor and night was setting in, like rapidly. And the horizon was changing from sunset to darkness, and the stars were starting to populate and illuminate. And there was one star that was shining way off into the distance, and it was blinking. And as I looked at that star, it told me, we are waiting for you, we've been waiting for you, or something along those lines, and, there's work to do. I forget right now because I journaled it, and I didn't know this part was going to come into the story today. So that was very interesting, looking back on that first Reiki experience and that opening up and what started to become all these past lives and visions, over the millennium. And then, to those beings in the UFO in the Southwest when we were on mushrooms popping up saying, we've been waiting for you. So maybe that's a change in geography down the road. Maybe that's a change in location, or it's just a trip that I'm taking in the future. They've definitely been connecting and reaching out and appearing here for the last 3 years now, as you've seen in the videos, maybe even more back to my childhood and whatnot. But through regressions, not a lot of that is being answered or shown to me. It's being shut down. It's being containered. It's being just not spoken of right now. So there's a lot of different stuff, and there was another part to the multidimensional being where, they were just saying you have to walk the path and the path illuminates, right? So I guess that's where that came from. When I was reading that journal entry the other day, it reminded me of the Reiki healing the first time where I was cracked open and they said, we've been waiting for you and we have work to do and yada, yada, yada. There's more to that first experience, though I can't remember what it was right now. I have it written down somewhere. But what was very interesting about that first Reiki experience and being in the pyramid of Giza and going from the bottom to the top and the bottom to the top and then out into the desert and then, them telepathically communicating to me and telling me that they're ready for me. The very next day I was on a hike and I was out in this area that, was not open to the public. And it was in what I think you would call receivership. It was this family who, over the last 10 years, has lost more and more and more and more of their farmland / stables, and it has been acquired by the Forest Preserve. So I was walking in an area that they were kind of, done with, and the Forest Preserve had taken over, but more changes would be made and more things would be happening to the property. But anyway, I'm walking. And this was like the day after that Reiki attunement or that Reiki healing. And I looked down on the ground and there's an empty pack of cigarettes called Pyramid. And I'm like, what? I'm like, what is this? I'm like, what is this all about? I'm like, I don't even know if I've ever heard of this brand. And, there were the three colors, like the orange and the brown and the tan, if you were to Google it and look it up. And I took pictures and I documented that. So that would be like 7 years ago now, or 6.5 years ago, way back on my other personal Instagram as part of my awakening. But this is a very short, in a way, and quick UFO story. The UFO was, in my consciousness or my higher self, or what you could say, when I was taking mushrooms and technically on hallucinogens. But, we did everything the correct way possible by setting the space and blessing the mushrooms and, looking for our highest best and hoping for our highest best. And, we weren't just sitting around trying to get high and use drugs. And, the very next day that we took the mushrooms again, that was very intense for reasons I won't go into, but I could feel other people's pain. I could feel the struggle their body was going through. I could feel how they were fighting cancer and, all the things that, they were fighting. And to feel that type of pain and how tired somebody is empathically, that was a trip. So mushrooms are great. I haven't done them since then, and that was probably May of 2023. So here we are 2 years later already. But that is a little bit of my story about, one of the UFOs showing up, communicating to me, letting me know that, they're waiting and I have work to do. And I don't know how I'm getting out there or when I'm getting out there. And that's, the unknown, but we'll see what happens down the road. And maybe that's some more keys and codes to unlock or some more experiences on the horizon. And this is also probably about, higher consciousness or multidimensional beings communicating with me, contacting me, downloading me with information, telepathically telling me things, showing me things, and then even allow me to feel things, or maybe even see into the future. Or maybe there's just another version of my consciousness that has split off and has already taken some of these classes or is hanging out with this old man right now. I don't know. But it was definitely very interesting. That's the best that I remember it right now without reading it. And I think I just read it a couple days ago in my journal. And that's that. So peace, love, and light to all of you. I hope you are all well. And happy July 8th. I think it's Gemini into, I don't even know. I've been reading all this astrology stuff. I just know with 777 portal yesterday, it was pretty intense on me. And I'm ready for what's new and what's coming. And I hope you are all as well. Was it Gemini into Mercury or something? I don't know. Peace, love, and light to all of you. Have a blessed day, and thanks for tuning in. Bye.